What job did you work at that was so bad? You quit on the same day you were hired? A vacuum cleaner sales job. They explained that I'd have to go to people's houses and offer to clean one room for them with the vacuum and I'd get paid if during my vacuum demo they bought a vacuum. Nah, I'm good. I like the vacuum though. An ex of mine worked for Kirby. If I recall correctly, he was expected to be in a person's house for 2 hours to sell them this goddamn vacuum. I wouldn't want a salesman in my house for 10 minutes. He lasted maybe a month, and then his paycheck bounced, which meant our rent check bounced. It was a mess. Much like our relationship. When the Kirby people came to our house one time, my parents got them drunk. I think we ended up getting a discount on our vacuum because of it. I was like 12 and more concerned with what was happening on Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm 22 and I'm still more concerned about what's happening in Avatar than outside. Can confirm. I'm 28 and still more concerned with what's happening in Avatar than the outside. When I was 16 I got a job at KFC. It was disgusting. The kitchen was dirty and people were rude af. They had me making the coleslaw. It came in separate bags. I eat cabbage in single huge bag. Carrots. Mayo. I was mixing it by hand and in a huge vat thing. Found a cockroach in there. Told the manager and he replied that it was normal. I quit then and there. Noped out to that place. People wonder why I refuse to eat KFC. I've never seen one that looks clean enough to be a restaurant. Mind you, this was when I was 16 and I'm 35 now. Things can change, but who knows. I took a kitchen tour once in KFC. It was clean and neat. Food was well managed. Also, that KFC branch even had a poster to ask the manager for kitchen tour, which is what I randomly did one day. After listening to lots of other stories, I decided to eat only in those KFCs which offer kitchen tour. I can expect them to be pest free at least. Worked at a recycling plant for medical supplies. My job was to get inside the compressing machines and clean them. The machines were filled with blood needles and shit. It was absolutely disgusting. Plus the place was infested with rats. Bruh, that's horrifying. Got a job at a sawmill right out of high school. It was probably opened in the 40s. Dangerous as hell. First day, one of the guys that worked there was bragging about how good the owner was to work for. Held up his 2-fingered hand, touched the 2 nubs one at a time, and said I got $500 each when that happened. About an hour and I went to my car under the auspices of grabbing my thermos. Left and never went back. That is some Sweet Home Alabama shit. Retrieving used form work. 10 guys throwing 20-kilogram pieces of nail-infested timber down from 5 floors up. My job was to dodge the falling bits of timber and avoid stepping on nails while I did it for 10 hours a day. Fuck that. No first aid guy on site. Got a nail through each foot on my first day, which I disinfected, bandaged and went back to work. Some help desk job. Recruiter lied his ass off. You gotta be careful with them. I've been sent into some bogus interviews because a recruiter just wanted to meet his quota. Another tip an old guy told me was to always send your resume as PDF. Recruiters will tweak your resume without your asking, just to try and get you into an unqualified interview. And it'll set your ass up for failure. And always take a hard copy of your resume to the interview. I once had a recruiter helpfully add a bunch of Java experience to my resume. I hate Java. I was very confused when I realized I was being interviewed for a Java programmer position. At least the interviewer and I had a good laugh when we compared my resume to the one the recruiter sent. Yay. This happens all the time innit? Those recruiters can be the worst, man. I was 18 and it was as a waitress for a fancy retirement home where they made meals to order for the residents who all ate in a communal facility. Somehow we were responsible for knowing a person's dietary restrictions, but there was no list of people with dietary restrictions as it's protected health info. We were just supposed to figure it out. For example, if grandma was allergic to peanuts, forgot and ordered a dish with peanuts, we were held responsible. The men keep smacking my butt with their napkins and making inappropriate comments, which was fine with management because they were old/senile. My first shift was supposed to be covering breakfast/lunch, 8 hours, but because so many people quit mid-shift it became a mandated double. I lasted 1 day. Of the 15 people I trained with, only one made it 2 weeks. That's not right. Or legal, I think. To withhold dietary restrictions of residents. I used to work in a retirement as a chef. Dining staff is considered a caregiver and allowed access to that information. The assisted living residents ate in a restaurant setting as well. Servers would take orders and ring it into a POS system. It had to be rung in under the resident's name because it would display their dietary restrictions. We also had a printed out list of residents with restrictions for quick reference. As the sous chef, I even had to update restrictions nurses made if the dietary technician wasn't there. We also had the right to downgrade their diet to softened foods or thickened drinks if we noticed them struggling to eat. Only the speech therapist and nutritionist could upgrade them to regular food. I worked food service in a long-term care residence, and every member of the dining staff had access to a binder filled with restrictions, allergies and recommendations for any resident we might be feeding. I also temped at a senior residential facility. I worked in the dish room, but I remember the binder was available as needed. I was working at a restaurant. 1. A co-worker told me the boss asked him if he would sell him his passport. 2. Different co-worker said the boss asked him to be a guarantor in a totally blank passport application. 3. Some customers came up to me to say they overheard some men on the patio talking about trafficking people. Like, in the way that they were discussing plans to do it, unbeknownst to them. One of these men was the owner. Owner was from Albania, by the way. Not trying to generalize, but they are known to be one of the human trafficking hotspots. I quit that day and called the RCMP. Sort of like Canada's FBI. Edit, spelling add-on. I've actually never even seen taken. Did they find anything? I never heard back from the authorities. But the guy's a scumbag. Sadly, I see he has opened up another restaurant since, so I guess he remains a free man. Sometimes law enforcement agencies will let people operate until they can build a solid case. As a teen, I applied for a standard teenage summer job picking berries on a farm. Thought it'd be with other people, but turns out I was the only one hired, and half of the first 12 each day was also construction / helping the farm renovate their barn. Not worth it for minimum wage. Total opposite for me. As a preteen / young teen, me and my friends would hop in my older brother's truck and go work on the berry farm 20 minutes out. More you picked, the more you made. I was a rich 12-year-old those summers, lol. And a belly full of fruit. I did this too, and they let us eat however much we wanted. You are a lot the first couple days, and then regular amounts after that. Yep. After a while, man, berries. Away at college. Needed a job. Got hired on at a national pizza chain. With the table involved. Anyway, show up the first day and quickly notice every single person working there is tweaking. Everyone. No way I was going to deal with a bunch of fucking tweakers. And quit after my first shift. Manager asked why. And I told him, because everyone here is tweaking. His response, how did you know? Maybe it was the dilated eyes. The fact everyone here is sweating, like it's 113 degrees out. Yet I need a long sleeve shirt to stay warm. Pardon my ignorance. But what's a tweaker? Someone who takes meth. I applied for a call center in my local area. Interview went well. Hired on the spot and introduced to cowhawkers. Small rented space. Less than 20 employees. Was left by manager to chat with future cowhawkers while I waited for my mom to pick me up. I was still 17 at the time. 3 months shy of 18 when one cowhawker let slip some mumble about how he hopes this young girl doesn't leave like the rest. I couldn't get the guy's words out of my head, so when I got home I did some more research on this business and found out they've been hiring for months and constantly losing people, but primarily hiring females who then left the company pretty quickly after. Found a forum of such employees talking about being sexually harassed while working there, how they never got paid what they were promised, etc. Just really shady things. But immediately after learning about the sexual harassment claims I called and said I would not be taking the position after all. They didn't even ask for a reason. Man, you'd think they'd get the hint after a couple of them. Guess upper management is stuck in 70s. I applied for a job online titled feeding baby pigs. I got a call from a man and he gave me a vague description of the job and said I could come to the pig barn and have a chat about it. So I showed up and he continues to talk about it in a way that gave me a weird vibe. He seemed very desperate to hire somebody. He ran it by me that occasionally a piglet may need to be put down, so I figured that's what the elephant in the room was. I show up my first day at 7 AM and I enter the barn. You are required to shower off before you enter due to human swine disease contraction. After that I enter, and the first thing I smell is the strongest odor of ammonia I have ever smelt. The place was like prison cells of 500-pound pigs and my job was to feed them. I was instructed to shock them with a shocking stick if they were lying down and wouldn't get up to eat, which I didn't like. Sometimes you had to repeatedly do it, and it felt cruel. I continue to follow around this woman who is sort of touring me around / training me. I'm noticing piles of dead and blackened piglets in the aisleways. I guess it's common for the mothers to accidentally roll on them and squish them because they are so massive. I mentioned the overpowering smell of ammonia, but what was even worse was the amount of flies in the place, and they were so aggressive. You could barely take a breath without literally breathing in a fly, and if you did it was a polluted breath of pure ammonia. I'm continuing the tour and still pretty much only feeding massive 500-pound pigs. At the end of our feeding round we finally get to the place where the piglets are. There are slightly bigger pens with mothers nursing very small newborn-like piglets. There's a couple pens with a mother specifically for feeding runts from other pens that weren't strong enough to fight for it. What I learned was if the runts in these pens still show no signs of being able to nurse, we need to put them down. The method of putting these newborn piglets down is to grab them by their hind legs and basically tomahawk them on the cement floor so that the back of their head hits first. I asked my trainer how often this needs to be done because I was told it was only seldom, and she said it's a daily occurrence. I told her right then that I don't have it in me to do that, let alone every day, and that I would not be able to sleep at night if I did this for a living. I said I don't see myself pursuing this and don't want to waste anybody's time. I didn't mention all the other stuff to her. I used the baby pig killing as a point to get me out of there. I was only in there for 2 or 3 hours, but when I got home I had a cough and sore throat for the rest of the day from the ammonia. By far the worst job I ever had. TLDR, a job for feeding baby piglets turned out to be tomahawking piglets onto the cement. I tried being an ice cream man over a summer, 11-hour day, made around $80, and was considered a top seller. If that was the best, I didn't want to see the average day. My highlight was buying a kid ice cream. He started crying when he didn't have enough. I bought it for him instead. Cause that's what heroes do. When I was 14 I got a job at one of the few fast food places in town that hired kids under 16. I went to orientation, where they explained the positions different age groups could fill. My job would be to take people's orders out to their cars. I wasn't allowed to touch money or work the fryer. I showed up on the first day and was told my whole shift would be on the fryer. I told them I was 14 and not allowed to, plus I hadn't been trained on it. The guy basically said tough shit and tried to hand me a hairnet. I just left. / day. I'm glad you left. Inexperienced people should be nowhere near hot, bubbling oil. Not only his own safety, but there are also a lot of regulations in food service about how food must be handled before / after it is cooked. An untrained employee could unwittingly give dozens of people food poisoning in a single shift. Op absolutely did the responsible thing, making up for the irresponsible management. If I sneeze on food that is still sizzling, will the sizzling kill most of the germs / virus? If you mean the oil, yes, but it's still very gross and should be avoided. I didn't, but it was not uncommon at all to see new Amazon delivery drivers quit after 1-3 days. They picture it as driving and just sitting on there, but was my theory. Delivering 250 packages to 180 stops is hard work. Loading the van plus walking some stupid ass driveway / stairs with heavy packages plus traffic can be overwhelming. I'm a warehouse worker for Amazon, and I just finished my first week, and it took everything in me not to quit on my third and fourth day. Did that shit for almost 2 years. And what the hell is it with people mentioning the drivers? We were pissing in bottles and working 14 hours a day long before the drivers came into the picture. Really though? Fuck Amazon. Doesn't matter what you do, they still treat you like shit. Unless you're in Seattle, then you matter and are important or some shit. Wendy's. I worked a lot of fast food when I was a teenager, but being corrected on the way I said mayonnaise was too much apparently. Mayo. We are weird when we are kids. How did you pronounce mayonnaise? Like mayonnaise? Or mayonnaise? No, it's mayonnaise. Is mayonnaise an instrument? No Patrick. Mayonnaise is not an instrument.